Flight 370 of Malaysian Airlines has been a matter of curiosity for years, but what happened to this plane? Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 MH370 was scheduled to fly from Malaysian capital Kuala Lumpur to China's capital Beijing on March 8, 2014 at 0:35 a.m., but the MH370 flight never arrived in Beijing. 9 years after the mysterious disappearance of the plane, we still have no answer today as to where the plane is or what happened to it. So let's take a look at the mystery behind this plane and why it disappeared. MH370 was making one of Malaysia Airlines' 2 daily flights from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, and the flight time was planned for a total of 5 hours and 24 minutes, but the plane's fuel economy allowed it to fly for an additional 2 hours, so in an emergency it could land somewhere else instead of Beijing. The flight was operated with the services of 2 pilots and 10 other cabin crew, all of whom were Malaysian citizens, and was captained by Zahir Ahmad Shah, 53, who has been a Malaysian Airlines staff member since 1981 and has 18,000 hours of flight experience. 27-year-old Farik Abdul Hamid, who has been working with the company for 7 years and has 2,700 hours of flight experience, was the co-pilot. In addition to these 12 officers, there were 227 passengers on board, 153 Chinese, 50 Malaysians, 7 Indonesians, 6 Australians, 5 Indians, 4 French, 3 Americans, 2 Canadians, 2 Iranians, 2 New Zealanders, 2 Ukrainians, 1 Dutch, 1 Russian, 1 Taiwanese passenger. MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur at 0:42 a.m. slightly later than the scheduled time and reported to the Air Traffic Control Center that it had reached an altitude of 18,000 feet. Although the plane was operating normally at first, it sent its final automatic position report at 1:06 a.m. The last verbal communication the outside world received from anyone on board the aircraft was at 1:18 a.m., 37 minutes after takeoff time. The Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control Officer phoned the MH370 plane entering Vietnamese airspace to remind him to send a report to Ho Chi Minh City.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysia 370.
And as the plane continued its planned journey in the Gulf of Thailand, everything suddenly went strange. Only 3 minutes after their last conversation, at 1:21, the MH370 plane suddenly disappeared from all radar screens in both Malaysia and Vietnam. The radio transmitter on the plane, which was responding to the radio signals from outside, was no longer working. Although the sky was clear that night, neither a cloud, nor a storm, nor a fog, it was very likely that the radio transmitter was intentionally switched off by a human on board rather than a natural disaster or technical malfunction. Search teams first focused on the area between the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand where the plane disappeared. However, the Malaysian Army radar system still had the technology to track the aircraft, and according to additional information shared by the military, the plane made a right turn, then suddenly made a full left turn, and began to fly undulatingly, frequently ascending and descending several thousand feet towards the Malay Peninsula. As the plane passed parallel to Penang Island at 1:52 at night, it turned right and passed through the Strait of Malacca. At 2:22 a.m., the MH370 aircraft was spotted in this area, which is the extreme point of the Malaysian Army radar's range. When the Malaysian government officially announced that all communication with the plane was cut off at this point, the most expensive search and rescue efforts in the world were started. Over the next few days, the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal were thoroughly scanned by international aircraft and ships. However, no trace of aircraft MH370 was found, but they didn't know that during this time MH370 was still flying and the plane was not where they were looking. It was later taken into account that the MH370 was equipped with satellite communication devices, and prior to takeoff the onboard communicator had established an indirect link with a station in Perth, Australia. And even though the aircraft was completely off the air traffic controller's radars, it continued to automatically send signals to satellites in space. The satellite was sending status requests hourly to the aircraft's satellite communication system all night long. Although these signals did not contain any information about the aircraft's position, the researchers measured the distance between the aircraft and the satellite, taking into account the transmission and reception time of each signal sent from the aircraft to the satellite. Based on the analysis of the flight path, taking into account fuel consumption, speed, and other factors, the most likely source of the final signal should have been somewhere along this arc south of the Indian Ocean. In other words, when the satellite data was analyzed, it was determined that MH370 made a strange turn again and proceeded on this route and flew on this route for more than 5 hours. And this plane was seen somewhere on this line. Thus, the search area was redefined taking into account the ocean current estimates. But the southern sides of the Indian Ocean were so far away that it took 6 days for search and rescue teams to even get there. The plane had been flying for 7 hours and 38 minutes from the start and had only 5.5 hours of fuel. The plane probably ran out of fuel, but even after the plane ran out of fuel, someone might have made the plane go an extra 200 kilometers. According to this information, the plane should have crashed somewhere in the Indian Ocean between 8:19 and 9:15 in the morning, but where? Also that night the satellite made 2 attempts to connect to the plane by phone. The cockpit of the plane was called by satellite at 2:39 in the morning, but no one answered the phone. About 5 hours later, another phone call was made to the plane at 7:13 a.m., but again no one picked up the phone. Between March 18th and April 28th, 19 ships and 345 military helicopters and naval fleets swept over 4.5 million kilometers of ocean area. Not a single trace of the plane has been found in this area, which is wider than the area of the country of India. Searches made by viewing the ocean floor with a submarine also found nothing. The MH370 was also equipped with 2 locator boxes that would allow it to be found underwater, but their battery life was 40 days. And as we approached the end of this period, at the beginning of April, the transmitters sent signals from a depth of 3,000 meters. A submarine then scanned the area where the signal was detected for weeks, but no wreckage was found. Nothing was found in the year after the plane disappeared. However, on July 29, 2015, on the island of Reunion, a small island east of Madagascar, an island nation in East Africa, a group of people cleaning the beach found a large piece of aircraft covered with mussels 2 meters long. After examining the date and serial numbers on the inside of the piece, it was confirmed that this piece belongs to flight MH370. Part of the plane was washed ashore as far as the coast of Reunion Island, 4,000 kilometers from the area where the searches were made. The piece was a flaperon that served as the control for the wing of the plane. In the analyses made, it was understood that the plane did not use this part, which was supposed to be used for soft landing, and did not slow down by opening this part in the air. This means that the plane did not glide into the ocean, but crashed into the ocean vertically from the top to the bottom. 31 more items thought to be aircraft related, such as the flaperon, were found. The engine cover of one of the 2 engines, a smashed frame of the seatback television screens are some of them. No traces of explosion were found in the remains tested, except for 3 minor burn marks on an unidentified piece. However, almost 3 years had passed since the disappearance of the plane on January 17, 2017, when the search efforts were stopped due to the absence of any evidence of the plane's whereabouts. The search efforts, which cost $155 million, were mostly led by countries such as Malaysia, Australia, and China, and went down in history as the most expensive search effort ever made. Later, a private company called Ocean Infinity scanned an area of 33,000 kilometers, the size of the country of Belgium, but found no wreckage or anything belonging to the plane in them. There were 2 Iranian passengers on the plane who were later found to be traveling with fake passports. These 2 Iranian passengers had entered Malaysia just 1 week before their flight date and were traveling to Beijing on a one-way ticket. But according to the Interpol report, these 2 men were refugees from Iran's repressive regime and were not equipped to hijack the plane. Both U.S. and Malaysian intelligence thoroughly searched the backgrounds of all passengers, including a flight engineer, and found no potential threats. But American intelligence officials attributed the inoperability of the transmitter device that indicates the location of MH370 to someone in the cockpit deliberately turning off this device. So, could one of the flight attendants or pilots have hijacked the plane? Police reviewed 170 interviews of cabin crew members with their families and close friends and found nothing to cause concern. The pilots' homes were searched, their financial records were examined, and FBI analyzed the computer flight simulator in the captain's home and found nothing again. Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, was married and had 3 children. He had 18,000 hours of flying experience and had a clean track record. Investigators found no evidence of any distress in the pilot's economic situation, and no unusual expenditure was found in his previous monthly expenses. He also did not have a mental illness and did not show any change in lifestyle and behavior. And Farik Abdul Hamid, who was also co-pilot, had no known mental or economic disability. According to the Australian Transportation Safety Bureau, the reason why MH370 officers did not respond was because the cabin pressure had dropped and the crew had fainted, because the plane had traveled in a straight line for 5 hours straight across the Indian Ocean. What do you think really happened to the MH370 plane?
Malaysian 370.
370 maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.